Have you ever sat across from someone you love, maybe at dinner, maybe walking side by side, and still felt like they weren't really there? It's a strange kind of emptiness, being close in body but galaxies apart in presence. Pink Floyd's Wish Why Captu. In this video, we're going to explore how mindfulness can transform not only our relationships, but the way we experience life itself. Stay with me until the end, because what you'll discover may change the way you show up for the people you love and for yourself. Part 1. Opening and Awakening. Have you ever been sitting across from someone you care about, sharing a meal or walking together, yet felt a strange distance, as if both of you were actors saying your lines rather than truly being there? That ache, the one Pink Floyd captures in Wish You Were Here, is more than poetic. It's a mirror held up to our lives, suggesting that although we may be physically near, we are not always truly present. In Buddhist teachings, this gap between being physically present and being truly present is understood as a form of ignorance. Not ignorance of facts, but ignorance of connection, of presence. It's the mind being somewhere else, caught in regret, anxiety, or distracted by screens. The song, released in the 1970s, becomes timeless in this sense. On one level, it mourns the loss of Syd Barrett, a member who drifted away physically and mentally. On another level, it reminds all of us, how often do our relationships suffer not because someone leaves, but because someone never really stays, even when right there. Buddhist thought labels that numbness dukkha, when we are not awake to what is here, and suffering follows. The first stirrings of change come when we ask, are we really here with each other? And are we here with ourselves? Part 2. What it means to be truly present. To be truly present means our attention, heart, and mind are aligned with what is. The Buddhist practice called mindfulness, sati in Pali, is not about turning off everything else. It's more radical. It's bringing sharp, kind awareness to whatever is happening in the moment. If you're talking with someone, you listen not to respond, but to understand. When you touch something, you feel it. When you see something, you see with freshness, not through habit or filter. Breath becomes a portal. In Buddhist meditation, observing the breath, its coming, going, its sensations, anchors us in the now. This doesn't mean having a blank mind, but noticing when the mind wanders and gently returning. Deep listening is another core practice. Listening not as judge, not a fix, but just to be there. One teacher said that just 5 minutes of such listening can relieve someone of immense suffering, all because they felt seen, walking, eating, washing dishes. Each mundane moment can be a chance to practice presence, to transform routine into ritual. Part 3. Stories and Examples. Let me share a story I know to make this more vivid. There was a woman, let's call her Maria, who always felt distant from her husband. They lived together, raised kids together, but when she spoke, she felt unheard. When she listened, she was distracted. Phones on the table during dinner, thoughts drifting to work, sleep coming too quickly without reflection. One day, after an argument, Maria decided to try something different. For 5 minutes each night, without any phone or distraction, she would ask her husband how his day was really, and then just listen. No advice, no judgment. Over time, those 5 minutes grew into 10, then more. She noticed his eyes soften, his words slow, and more than that, she felt herself soften. The distance she felt melted, not because circumstances changed dramatically, but because presence changed. Another example, a monk in a busy monastery. Every morning, he walks among the trees before dawn, just walking, feeling his feet, smelling the dew, hearing birds. He's not trying to clear his mind, but to be with what is. On days when he skips that walk, He feels more agitated on those that he honors it. He carries a calmness into the many tasks of the day. These stories show that presence is not about perfection, but small, intentional shifts. Presence doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be in the ordinary. Part 4, Personal Reflections and Modern Realities. In our age, presence is almost revolutionary. We carry devices that fragment attention. Notifications pull us away even in quiet moments. Even being on a Zoom call often means part of our focus is on chatting, another part on what's next, another on Instagram or email. We live superficially in many spaces, and deeply in almost none. I've noticed personally that when I take 1 hour a day where no screens are allowed, just writing, walking, or being with someone without distraction, the rest of the day flows more grounded. And what's interesting, people respond to that. My partner looks up when I'm talking. My friend leans in. The silence feels safe instead of awkward. Presence feels like a kind of gift, to me, to others, but it's not always easy. Guilt, fear, shame, busyness, all these can make us resist slowing down. There's pressure to perform, to always be doing something. Buddhist teaching would say that suffering arises when we identify too much with habits and roles, when we forget our original heart, the part that just is. Part 5, Returning and Practicing Presence. So, how do we cultivate presence in everyday life? Here are some things that help. Set intention. Decide that presence matters. Start small. Maybe 1 meal a day without your phone, or setting reminders to breathe deeply. Mindful breathing. When you notice thoughts pulling you away, return to the breath. Use it as anchor. Deep listening. Make room to listen without fixing or judging. Let someone share, and your presence becomes a container. Ritualizing ordinary tasks. Washing dishes, folding clothes, walking. Do them with attention. Let them be sacred. Boundaries with technology. Have no screen times or spaces. Pause before opening an app. Notice how you feel after scrolling. Is there joy or emptiness? These are not magic. They don't eliminate suffering, but they gradually reshape our experience. Like pruning weeds in a garden. The flowers don't bloom overnight, but with care, the soil becomes fertile again. Part 6. Presence is healing in relationships and within ourselves. When we talk about presence, it often sounds abstract, like something reserved for meditation halls, monks, or quiet retreats. But the truth is, presence is most powerful in the messiness of ordinary life, in the arguments we have with loved ones, in the loneliness we carry late at night, in the moments when words fail but silence speaks. Presence is not an escape from these moments. It is how we transform them. Think about a relationship that has drifted. Maybe a partner, maybe a parent, maybe an old friend. On the surface, things look fine. You still talk, you still see each other. But underneath, there's a quiet distance. Misunderstandings pile up. Small resentments harden. And somewhere in the background, both of you begin to feel unseen. What presence offers in these moments is not a magic solution, but a shift of energy. Instead of trying to win the argument, fix the other person, or defend ourselves, presence invites us to pause, to breathe, to ask, am I really here with this person, or am I lost in my own story? There's a story told by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Zen master, about a young couple who came to him after years of feeling disconnected. They were not fighting, but they were also not connecting. Their home was silent, not the peaceful silence of meditation, but the heavy silence of absence. Thich Nhat Hanh gave them a simple exercise. For 1 week, each time they looked at each other, they should silently say in their minds, I am here for you. And when one spoke, the other should silently say, "I know you are here and I am happy." At first, it felt awkward, but slowly something shifted. They began to smile more. Their voices softened. The silence became warmer, not colder. Nothing grand changed. They did not solve all their problems, but the act of being present softened the walls they had built. Why does this work? Because at the core of human suffering is the fear of invisibility, the fear that we do not matter, that no one really sees us. Presence dissolves that fear. When someone looks into your eyes with full attention, you no longer feel like a role or a burden or a background character. You feel like a human being, alive, valuable, real. That recognition heals in ways words cannot. But presence is not only for relationships with others. It is equally about our relationship with ourselves. Many of us spend years running away from our own inner world. We stay busy. We scroll endlessly. We bury ourselves in work or entertainment. Why? Because being with ourselves feels uncomfortable. We are afraid of what we might hear in the silence. The regrets, the shame, the grief. Yet Buddhism teaches that the very act of turning toward ourselves with presence, without judgment, without agenda, is where healing begins. Imagine sitting quietly and placing a hand on your heart. You notice the rhythm, the rise and fall, the breath that has been carrying you your entire life. You whisper inwardly, "I am here for you." At first, your mind rebels. It wants distraction. But if you stay, if you keep returning to breath, slowly you begin to feel something soften. You realize you do not have to fight your thoughts. You do not have to fix your feelings. You just need to show up for them. That's presence too. Not escaping yourself, but sitting with yourself as you are. I once met someone who carried deep guilt from a broken relationship. For years, they tried to outrun the pain, new jobs, new hobbies, endless distractions. But no matter where they went, the ache followed. Finally, in a moment of exhaustion, they sat down, closed their eyes, and simply breathed. For the first time, they allowed themselves to feel the pain instead of suppressing it. Tears came, not once, but many times. And yet, after each wave, there was relief. They told me later. When I stopped running, I realized the pain was smaller than I feared. What hurt more was the running. That is presence. The courage to stop running and to meet what is. Presence also changes the way we approach conflict. Instead of reacting out of anger or fear, presence creates a space, a gap between stimulus and response. In that space, wisdom can enter. A harsh word can be softened. A misunderstanding can be clarified. Sometimes, silence itself becomes a medicine. I've seen couples sit in silence after an argument, both focusing on their breath. And in that silence, the intensity melts. The problem doesn't vanish, but the fire cools enough for compassion to return. And presence isn't just healing in big emotional moments. It's also in the tiny gestures that say, "I care." Think about the last time someone truly listened to you, without looking at their phone, without interrupting, without rushing. How did it feel? Probably like a deep exhale, like being allowed to exist fully. Now imagine offering that to someone else. The practice is simple. Put down the distractions, breathe, and listen with your whole being. The effect is profound. There's also something humbling about presence. It reminds us of our shared humanity. When we are truly present with another, we notice their fragility, their tenderness. The person who seems angry is also carrying fear. The person who seems distant may be drowning in loneliness. Presence allows us to see beneath the surface roles, boss, partner, stranger, and touch the human beneath. That recognition is a kind of silent prayer. I see you. You are not alone. The Buddha once said, When we look deeply into the eyes of another being, we see ourselves. This is a paradox of presence. By giving it to others, we receive it ourselves. By showing up fully, we heal both the relationship and our own fragmented heart. And here's the beauty. Presence doesn't require years of training or perfect conditions. It requires intention. You can begin right now, in this very moment. The next time you're with someone, look into their eyes, take one conscious breath, and silently say to yourself, I am here. Notice how it shifts the energy. Notice how the other person softens. Even if they don't realize why, presence is contagious. When one person slows down, the other often follows. When one person offers silence instead of reaction, the space becomes safe for honesty. When one person dares to be real, it gives permission for the other to do the same. That's why presence is not just personal, it's relational. It transforms not only us, but the spaces we inhabit. In the end, presence as healing is not about never feeling pain, conflict, or disconnection again. Those are part of being human. Rather, it's about having the courage to meet those moments fully, without fleeing, without numbing. It's about showing up in relationships, in solitude, in conflict, in joy, with an open heart. And in that showing up, something shifts. We remember that we are alive. We remember that we are not alone. That is the quiet, radical power of presence. It heals without forcing. It restores without demanding. It says simply and profoundly, I am here. Part 8. Everyday rituals of presence. If presence is a medicine, then practice is the way we take the medicine every day. Presence does not come from wishing or waiting. It comes from creating small rituals, moments where we intentionally return to the here and now. The good news is you don't need to sit cross-legged in silence for hours to touch presence. You can cultivate in the most ordinary activities, walking, eating, even washing your hands. Life itself becomes a meditation hall. One of the simplest rituals is mindful breathing. Most of us breathe without ever noticing. The breath happens, but our minds are elsewhere. Yet the Buddha taught that the breath is a bridge between the body and the mind, between chaos and calm. You don't need to force it. You just notice. I know I am breathing in. Out. I know I am breathing out. If you do this 3 times, just 3 conscious breaths, you will feel a shift. Your shoulders relax. Your heart steadies. The fog of thoughts clears, even if only slightly. I remember a teacher once saying, if you can breathe, you can meditate. That was liberating, because so many of us think meditation requires discipline, silence, and perfect conditions. But really, it begins with noticing what is already here, the rise and fall of breath. That noticing is presence. Another ritual is mindful walking. Most of the time, when we walk, we are rushing toward the next meeting, the next errand, the next goal. We treat walking as a bridge between 2 points, not as a living experience. But what if once in a while we walk without rushing? Each step becomes a kiss on the earth. Each step says, I have arrived. I am home. You don't have to change your schedule. Just change your awareness. Whether you're walking to your car, to the kitchen, or down the street, you can breathe and smile with each step. Suddenly, the journey is no longer a blur. It is life itself. Eating is another powerful ritual. Food is more than fuel. It is a daily invitation to gratitude and awareness. How often do we eat while scrolling on our phones or watching TV, barely tasting a bite? What if instead we placed the phone aside, bowed slightly to food, and took the first bite with full attention? Notice the texture, the taste, the life energy of the food. Remember the sun, the rain, the farmers, The earth that made this possible, that is presence, it turns a sandwich into a prayer, a cup of tea into a meditation. Even washing your hands can be a moment of mindfulness. Feel the water touch your skin, the temperature, the texture of the soap. Instead of rushing, let the act remind you, this moment is fresh, like water. I can begin again. In some monasteries, even these tiny actions are done with full awareness, not as chores, but as opportunities to return home to present. One ritual I personally find powerful is a mindful pause. You can practice it anywhere, before answering the phone, before opening an email, before responding in a conversation. Take one conscious breath. That's all. It sounds too simple, but this pause often prevents us from reacting impulsively. It allows wisdom to slip in. Sometimes the difference between regret and peace is just one breath. Presence also grows through gratitude rituals. At the end of the day, before sleeping, you can recall 3 moments you are grateful for. Not big achievements, just simple things. Maybe the smile of a stranger, the warmth of sun, the taste of your morning coffee. By naming them, you anchor yourself in what is real and nourishing. Gratitude is a form of presence because it draws the mind away from what is missing and back to what is here. For some people, journaling becomes a ritual of presence, not writing polished essays, but simply emptying the mind onto paper. Thoughts, feelings, confusions, just let them out. As you write, you begin to see yourself more clearly. The noise in the head becomes words on the page. Suddenly, what felt overwhelming becomes understandable. That clarity is a gift of presence. And of course, presence can be cultivated through community. Alone, we often drift back into distraction. But when we gather with others who also value presence, even just for a few minutes, the energy multiplies. Sitting in silence with friends, sharing mindful meals, or simply reminding each other to breathe, we create a field of awareness stronger than what we can sustain alone. This is why Buddhist practice emphasizes Sangha or community. Presence is personal, but it is also collective. But here's something important. Rituals should not become rigid. If we treat them like obligations, they lose their magic. The spirit of presence is freedom, not pressure. You don't have to force yourself into a schedule. Instead, let rituals be gentle reminders. If you miss a day, simply begin again. The beauty of presence is that it is always available. You cannot lose it. It's right here, waiting for you in this breath. Some people ask, how do I remember to be present when life is so busy? The answer is, use daily activities as bells of mindfulness. Every time you hear your phone ring, instead of rushing, use it as a reminder, breathe. Every time you stop at a red light, instead of fuming, smile and breathe. Every time you drink water, let it remind you, this moment is precious. Life gives us countless bells, if only we notice. One of my favorite practices is what Thich Nhat Hanh called hugging meditation. When you embrace someone, instead of rushing, pause. Breathe in, silently say, I am here. Breathe out, silently say, you are here and I am grateful. That simple ritual transforms an ordinary hug into a healing one. The other person may not even know why, but they will feel the depth of your presence. In truth, the possibilities are endless. Presence is not about adding something new to your life. It's about transforming what is already there. Breathing, walking, eating, listening. These are not exotic practices. They are life itself. What changes is not the activity, but the quality of awareness we bring to it. As you weave these small rituals into your days, something shifts. Stress feels lighter. Relationships grow warmer. Even solitude feels less lonely. You begin to realize that presence is not a special state reserved for rare moments. It is the ground of being, available in each ordinary act. The miracle is not walking on water or in the air. The miracle is walking on the earth, fully awake. And when you forget, as we all do, the practice is simple. Return. No guilt, no self-judgment. Just return to the breath, to the step, to the sip of tea. That return is the heart of presence. It is not about never drifting away. It is about always coming home. Part 7. Final lessons and conclusions. At the end of this journey, what I take away is this. True presence is among the most radical kinds of love. It is offering yourself fully to another human being, and daring to be a little vulnerable. It's saying, I see you, not as a gesture, but in full attention. We're all longing for connection, for meaning, for being seen. Often we think we need more time, more resources, more affirmation. But Buddhist teaching suggests what we truly need is a return to our breath, to the person in front of us, to the life unfolding. When we do, even in small moments, life changes. The ache of feeling unseen softens. The distance closes. Relationships become deeper, quieter, more alive. So, if you feel pulled away, start where you are. Breathe. Turn off a phone. Look someone in the eyes and listen more than speak. Let presence, not performance, be your offering. Because presence is a gift we already have. The gift we can always give. And in its giving, perhaps we find the connection we were always longing for. Thank you for walking with me on this journey into presence, connection, and the wisdom of Buddhist practice. If something in this message resonated with you, I invite you not just to think about it, but to live it. Offer your full attention to someone today, even if only for a single breath or a single moment. And if you found this video meaningful, share with a friend who might need the same reminder, that they are seen, that they are not alone. Remember, presence is not about being perfect. It's about returning again and again to what is real, to what is here. Until next time, may you find peace in your breath, joy in your steps, and true connection in the hearts around you. I'll see you in the next video.